Thank you everyone for joining us for the webinar on Performance Manager 2.x Basics presented by Gavin. My name is Mallory Misnarsic and I'm the Global Project Manager here at HARMAN. A few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels during the webinar. However, there is a chat function where you can submit questions to the presenter and he'll try to answer as many questions as possible at the end. This webinar will also be recorded and the link will be made available a few days after this presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control. We encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our learning session workshop series on pro.harman.com, as well as visiting Harman Professional University to see our many on-demand and certification courses that are available to you for free. And now I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Gavin, the presenter for today's webinar. Chris is a West Coast-based member of our Harman Production Audio Specialist team. He specializes in the training and application of HARMAN Tour audio solutions, including loudspeakers, amplifiers, and performance software products. And now I'll pass the mic over to you, Chris, to get started.
Thank you so much, Mallory. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Introduction to Performance Manager. For those of you who are returning to our webinar series and attended last week's Performance Manager webinar, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. And for those of you who are just joining us, thank you for spending your time with us. To everybody here, I hope that this webinar finds you at home, safe and healthy, you and your family. And if you are just joining us, just know if you haven't got a chance to see last week's Introduction to LAC webinar, it has been made available online to rewatch. So like Mallory said, my name is Gavin. I am a production audio specialist here at HARMAN. I deal with all applications of JBL and HARMAN Performance Audio Systems, so the VTX line of products mostly. I'm joined on this call by my two colleagues, Raul Gonzalez and Nick Moore, who are also on the application production audio specialist team, and they will be actually in the Q&A room live to hopefully answer some of your questions as they come up. And like Mallory said, at the end, we will hopefully take some questions live. So jumping right back in, just a reminder of where we are. We're here to talk about the HARMAN Performance Audio software ecosystem. It's made up of 3 pieces of software, Line Array Calculator 3 and ArrayLink, which we were able to chat about last week. Those are the first 2 products you would use in the design and deployment of a line array, VTX line array. And then finally, we have the HARMAN's Performance Manager software, which we're here to talk about today. So just a little recap of what happened last week for those of you who weren't on the call and for those of you who would just like a quick reminder. Last week, we learned all about LAC3, and we learned how to create a new design in the software. I taught you the difference between entering venue geometry with X and Y or angle versus distance. And then we drew the venue that you see on the right there together using X and Y venue geometry. After we drew the venue, we added a 14-box A12 line array, and we used the autosplay function to create equal impact spacing across the listening plane. After we splayed the line array, we used the LACP control panel to strike up a tonal balance throughout the entire listening plane in the venue. Finally, we used the configuration tab in LAC to configure the rigging options and verify the mechanical safety of the line array we drew. After that, we exported the design to ArrayLink, and here you see a screenshot of what that export would look like. So from here, we would then take this app, ArrayLink, and using the information provided, we would then have put this line array up in the air, and we'd be ready to program our amps and deploy our system. So today we're going to focus on the 3rd and final step in the software ecosystem, and that's to use Performance Manager. Performance Manager is where we program, optimize, and monitor in real time our performance audio system. So Performance Manager is HARMAN's control system for all of our JBL live performance products. So not just our line arrays, but also anything in the VTX series. So the F series fill boxes, M series monitors. Additionally, it controls Vertec, anything that can run off the Crown HD series amps, 4x3500 and 12,000 HD. So we have a very step-by-step design workflow. It makes it extremely easy to build a project from scratch very quickly. Just like line array calculator, you saw how we work on a ribbon across the top. Everything moves from left to right, and it makes logical sense. We have a very powerful automated grouping functionality. So we will build a project today using array templates, and those array templates will create auto groups, which will help you as a system tech accomplish your goals much quicker. And you'll see how all that plays into the design in a moment here. The software makes for extremely easy preset management. You, as the system technician, never have to actually load any physical presets into the amplifier. You simply, into each individual amplifier, I should say, you simply design your system and then match the system to amplifiers, and then the system will take care of all the preset management. It pushes all the data to the amplifiers based entirely on the visual representation that you build in your project. Additionally, we have an import from LAC function, which is fantastic because we're actually going to import the line array that we drew last week in LAC, and we're going to bring over all the data and all the optimization from our LACP control panel right into today's design. There is Smart 7.8 integration into the software, and our hope is to show you some of the smart integration in the weeks to come in some of the advanced EM webinars. Additionally, a very powerful live monitoring suite, so all the information you would want live at your fingertips, so that makes you a very effective system technician. So today's agenda, what we're going to go over, is a basic software introduction. I'm going to create a new file using templates. We're going to import the line array that we created in LAC last week. Then we're going to add amplifiers, and we're going to associate amplifier channels. I'll show you how to set the HiQNet IDs, and additionally, we'll go over what a HiQNet address is if you don't know. And then we're going to bring the system online, and I'll show you a quick system test. So with that, let's jump right into Performance Manager. So what I've done is I've opened up Performance Manager and created a new file. What you see is a blank file in front of you. Across the top, we have the work tabs, right? Just like LAC, we work left to right. You see that most of these are actually grayed out, and I'm only able to click on Add Array Templates or Add Speakers. That's because Performance Manager is very sequential. We want you to work from left to right, and we only open up the options that you are able to use at that time, right? So we're not going to add DSP until we've added our speakers. So just like LAC, very sequential left to right. Underneath the work ribbon, you see that we have templates that I can drag and drop into the workspace. Below the templates, we have categories of templates, right? So suspended arrays, subwoofer ground stacks, distributed fills, and then special templates. We're not going to go into special templates today, and we're going to save that for the advanced class, but we will use the other three categories. Before we get started, a quick overview. The black space that you see, this large black area, this is the workspace. This is where we're going to actually build the project, okay? And the basic premise is that we drag items from the left into the workspace to bring them into our project. Today, we're going to build a file with templates. Templates simplify your life a lot as a system technician. They create automated grouping functions that save you a lot of time, and you'll see exactly how that plays in. There are, of course, other ways to build this to get to the same goal, but today we're going to focus on using templates to get there quickly and efficiently. So now we have a bunch of pre-made templates to serve most all use cases, so anything from single array all the way down to arena in the round. But today we're going to work with a simple left and right array template. So I'm going to click and drag my left-right template into my workspace, and you'll see my workspace becomes immediately populated with two empty containers, one named left and one named right. So before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about Workspace Navigation. So just so you know, you can move around the workspace by clicking and holding your scroll wheel on your mouse if you have one, or you can slide around the sliders to the left, to the right and bottom of the screen. We have some quick get around functions that make your life easy. I click on any container and hit the space bar on my computer, it zooms to extents to fill the screen with that container. If I tap it again, the screen will zoom out to fit everything in the project. Additionally, I can manually zoom in the top right corner, and I can manually zoom to extents by clicking this button to the right of the zoom bar. So what we're going to do here is we're going to drag all the templates into this project that we need, and then we're going to populate them with speakers. So for my project, I'm going to have the 14-box main A12 rig that we designed at LAC last week. Then I'm going to have 12 G28 subs, and I'm going to do that in 4 groups of 3 on the ground. And additionally, we'll add 4 A8 front fills to serve as the venue front fill system. So before I move into add speakers, I'm just going to drag all the templates I need into this file. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to move out of the way of my main left-right templates. I'm going to go to subwoofer ground stacks, and I have 3 things that I could bring into my project here. Variable rows, which are rows of subwoofers, variable columns, which are columns of subwoofers, and then I can import a subwoofer array from LAC3. Today we're going to stick with variable rows, and we will actually go over importing a subwoofer array from LAC3 in the advanced class. So next to my variable rows template, there's a number. That number stands for how many containers of rows will I need in this project, right? And I told you we're going to use 4 groups of 3, so I'm going to dial this number up to 4. Additionally, I could click and enter if I don't want to use the up and down arrows. So with 4 selected, I'm going to click and drag, and you see that my venue is populated with 4 empty subwoofer containers. Now don't worry just yet about cleaning up the file because we're going to add speakers and then we'll worry about making it pretty. For now, I just want to get the correct templates into the workspace. So for my front fills, I'm going to use the multi-point fill template, okay? I want to do a stereo front fill, which means I have 2 circuits of front fill, one for the left and one for the right. So I'm going to make sure I drag a front fill with 2 multi-point fills in. If I wanted a single mono front fill, potentially circuited from inside to outside, I might dial this down to 1 and then put 4 speakers in there. But for this situation, we're going to use 2 empty containers with 2 speakers in them each. So I will drag the number, I'll dial in the number 2, and then I'll drag that fill template into the venue. And then you see the fill template is in our workspace as well. So with these 3 templates in our file, I'm ready to add speakers. So once I click the Add Speakers icon on the work ribbon, you see that I get a similar looking box to the left, only this time it's populated with speaker options. And my speaker options are categorized by all the possible speakers that you can use with Performance Manager. So you see the A series, the V series, subwoofers, F series, M series, Vertec, Vertec Drive Pack, even VRX, and finally generic speakers, which we'll go into in some of the advanced classes. So I know that I have a 14-box A12 rig that I want to put into my left and right template here. But if you remember back to last week, we already built this array, and I've already optimized this system tonally for the venue. So I want to import this from LAC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going back into my Performance Manager file, and I'm going to click on either the left or right empty container. It doesn't matter which one you click on because remember they're linked to template. And then if I zoom in so you can see, when I click on the empty container, I get the LAC icon above the empty container. I simply click that, and then I navigate in my file menu and select the LAC project I want to import into the template. Once I hit OK, you'll notice the templates are populated with 14 A12s circuited exactly as we had done it in LAC. So, and that is 4 circuits of 3 with the bottom circuit of 2. Now, I want to populate my subwoofers, but I didn't do a subwoofer design. I'm going to manually enter them. So for this, we're going to go to the categories on the left-hand side, and I'm going to click VTX subwoofers. I know that I'm using G28s in this project, and I know that I have 3 G28s in each of my containers. So I'm going to go to G28, and I'm going to dial in the number 3. Then I will drag the G28 onto my outermost template, and then I'll drag another one to the inner. And this works in symmetrical pairs from outer to inner. So with my G28s in the project, I will also move back to A series, and I'm going to add my A8 front fills. So I have 4 total front fills, and I've done them in 2 groups of 2. So I already have 2 empty containers in the project. So all I have to do is go to my A8 and dial in 2. I'll drag it to the container, and the symmetrical container to the right of it will also populate with 2 A8s. At this point, I want to clean up my project a little bit. So you can click and drag on any container, and you can move it around, and you see handy alignment options will pop up on the screen for you. You can also click and highlight multiple objects at once, and you can drag things around at the same time. We have additional tools to help you align items quickly and increase or reduce spacing between them. So for these subwoofers, I want to reduce the spacing, so I'm going to highlight all 4 at once. I'm going to go to my Mode Functions tab, under Space, and I'm going to decrease horizontal spacing. I'm actually going to do this twice because I want to keep things compact. Now with my subwoofers spaced the way I like, I'm going to move my left array to a happy position here, and I'll do the same for my right array. I'll line up my front fills how I want them. And I'm happy with how this system is lined up. Now, if I hit the space bar, or I can zoom in on any object. Space bar zooms to extents, so it makes navigating very quickly. So I'll zoom in on my right array, I'll zoom back out. The next step is to name the containers logically. Okay, so if you look at every container, you notice that there is a title or a name above every one of them. The system creates some default names, but it's always recommended that you change these to a logical name that you can recognize in the field. And the reason is, once we program the amplifiers that are associated with this line array, for example, the left side A12, the amplifier screens will actually display on them that whatever title you put in this box. So if I double click on this title and I say left A12, when I go and program my amplifiers and I push the presets to the system, the amplifiers that are actually associated with these channels will display on their screen left A12 and then the circuit number. So I'm going to name my project. So I'm going to say right. This is going to be my right A12. Oops, 4 in there. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm just using my space bar to move around quickly. And I'm going to say that this is my left front fill. And of course, my right front fill. Now I'll name my subs. I'll call this left G28. I'll say left. We'll go left outer G28. I'll move to the next. Inner G28. So my right inner G28. And last but not least, this will be my right outer G28. So with all my containers happily named and all my speakers populating all of my containers and templates, I'm ready to move on to the next step, which is to add amps and DSP. Okay, so now you see the add amps and DSP lights up, so we're ready to move into the next step. Before we drag any amplifiers into this project, let's talk a little bit about what we see in the graphical representation of each component. For example, here's my left A12. On the left A12, I see some important things here. For one, I see my circuiting, so I know that all 3 of these speakers, 1, 2, 3, top down, are on a circuit. And I see all my circuits for the whole array. And additionally, the software shows band passes. So this is an A12, so it's a true 3-way design, all 4 amp channels, 2 lows, a mid, and a high. And I can click over any of these band passes, and you see it highlights the band pass for all 3 speakers, reminding you that it's part of a circuit. I can do that anywhere on any band pass for any of these speakers. If I move to my A8s, That's a two-way box off 2 amp channels. So, and it is circuited in groups of 2. You see the circuit connection between the box, and you see that when I click on the band passes, both cabinets in the circuit reflect that. Now, if I go back to my A12, above the A12 container, you will see an icon with a small cogwheel, and that's the settings indicator. If you wanted to change any settings about this line array, you could do so here. I'm not going to change anything in this example because we imported this from LAC3, and I'm already happy with the configuration of the circuiting amplification. For my left front fill, again, I have the same option for circuiting control if I want. I could change my circuit mode here if I wanted to, but I'm going to keep it at 2 box. I'm happy with that. Additionally, if you look on the G28s, you'll notice that the front face says S1 plus S2. At JBL, we have 2 different modes that we run our dual 18 subwoofers. Parallel, which is how it defaults to, so that's both drivers on 1 amp channel. And then we also have discrete mode. For this, we're going to run parallel mode. And underneath our options icon, you see an indication, a picture of the VRAC 12K that indicates that in this mode, we would patch our G28s off the blue NL4 outputs on the VRAC. So you see a convenient indicator right there. Now, I'm ready to drag amp racks into this system. So on the left-hand side, again, we have the items we can drag in, and then we have categories on the bottom. So racks means our VRAC solutions. So we have 2 VRAC solutions, our 12,000 HDs, and then our 4x3500s. The difference is the 12,000s are 2-channel amplifiers, and the 4x3500s are 4-channel amplifiers. Additionally, if you did not have your amplifiers in a VRAC, you could go to the crown section, the crown tab, and then drag in individual amplifiers. You are free to dial in the amount just like you would with any other thing you drag into the workspace. For this project, we're going to stick with VRACs, and I know that I have 4 VRAC 4x3500s and 2 VRAC 12,000s. Just so I don't overpopulate my screen at once, I'm going to drag them 2 at a time. So I'm going to drag in 2 VRAC 4x3500s from my left side. I'm going to line these up where I want them. And I'm going to drag 2 from my right side. And then I'm going to drag in 2 VRAC 12,000s for my subwoofers. I'm going to line everything up the way I like. And I'm happy with the way that looks. Now, if we click on a rack, we can hit spacebar and zoom in on it. You see the rack has 2 items. It has a label, so this is VRAC 1 through 6, and that's just automatically generated. I'm happy with that label, so I will not change that, but there's also 3 small numbers to the right side of every amplifier. The program starts sequentially, and if I zoom into the second, you see that it goes 4, 5, 6. This is what we call the high QNet address, and I'm going to pop out of Performance Manager for a second, and we're going to go back to our presentation just for a moment so we can talk about logical IP addresses and what is a high QNet address and the logical scheme to identify our high QNet addresses in our software. So this is probably well-known information for most of you, but we're going to talk about it just to make sure that we're all on the same page quickly. Every amplifier online in the JBL HARMAN Performance Audio ecosystem has 2 addresses. It has an IP address and it has a high QNet address. IP addresses is how the network communicates to each network-enabled devices. Just like your computer has a network port and is on and has an IP address, so do the amplifiers. Additionally, all the amplifiers have a high QNet address. The high QNet address is the simplified logical address of the amplifier that we will use in the software to tell the software which physical amplifier in the real world we're going to assign to the digital amplifier in Performance Manager. So real quick about IP addressing, we're going to talk about some HARMAN recommended practices so that you have a well-performing system. Reminder, there's two parts to every IP address. We have the network address, which is usually the first 3 octets, and then we have the device address, which is the final octet. All devices that are on the network that you intend to use, so all your amplifiers and your control computer, need to have the same network address. And then every individual device needs to have a unique device address, just like any other computer or device on an IP network. We recommend that you set up fixed IP addresses on your amplifiers and that you use logical addressing, something that makes sense the way you set up your rack naming nomenclature. For this example, we're going to use the 192.168.1 subnet, and we're going to use a subnet masks of 255.255.255. So here's an example. If you look at the pictures of logical IP addressing for 3 racks, so rack 1, amplifier 1 is .11, rack 1 amplifier 2 is .12, rack 1 amplifier 3 is .13, rack 2 amplifier 1 would be .21 for rack 2 amp 1, and rack 3 amplifier 1 would be .31 or rack 3 amplifier 1. So this is a recommended logical IP address scheme. So now additionally, every amplifier needs to be assigned a HiQNet address. By default, the factory will assign a randomized HiQNet address to the system, but when you configure your amp racks for the first time, it's important that we set up these logical IP addresses and HiQNet addresses. So in this example, we are going to use a 3-digit HiQNet address, the first digit being the rack number, and the second 2 digits being the location in the rack. Remember, this is the number that we are going to use in the software to actually refer to the physical amplifiers that exist in our real world. Once your IP addresses are set up and all your devices are in the same network, we don't have to remember what IP address belongs to what amplifier. We just have to interact with the HiQNet address, and the software will associate the IP addresses as necessary. So for this, the same rack one we looked at before that has IP address of .11, .12, and .13, I'll assign HiQNet address 101, 102, 103. Very simple, and it makes logical sense. So that I know when I roll rack 1 into my venue to power the top 3 circuits of my left line array, I know I'm telling the software that I want that rack to be 101, 102, and 103. So putting that all together, a logical naming scheme for our system with the same 3 racks would be as follows. We see rack 1 with a HiQNet address of 101 through 103, have an IP address of .11 through .13. And you'll notice all of these amplifiers, all 9 that you see on the screen here, all have the same network address of 192.168.1. The key here is to keep it simple, keep it logical, and you will have great success. So now going back to our Performance Manager design, the little number, as a reminder, is the HiQNet address. It doesn't ask me what the IP address of this amplifier is, it just wants to know what the HiQNet address is. So we just looked at my naming convention, and I know that under VRAC 1, amplifier 1 would be HiQNet address 101. So I need to change the HiQNet addresses in my file. There's 2 ways you can do that. I can click on the number and enter a new one, or I can do the whole rack at once by highlighting the rack and clicking the HiQNet address button up top. When I do that, it prompts me for a starting address and how many I should increment by each amplifier. So we're going to start with 101, and we're going to increment by 1. I hit enter or OK, and it does all 3 amplifiers in increments of 1. So 101 through 103. Quick tool to do it fast. So on VRAC 2, I'm going to zoom in, select the amplifier, click HiQNet address, and I'm going to start at 201 and hit OK. And now I'm addressed 201 through 203. I'm going to move over to VRAC 3, same thing, click the amp rack, hit HiQNet address, enter 301, and hit OK. And you see it changes the HiQNet addresses as I need it to. Same for VRAC 4. Same for VRAC 5. And finally, it will be the same for VRAC 6. So with all my amp racks given logical high QNet addresses that line up to the amplifiers that I have in the real world, I'm ready to associate actual channels of these amplifiers to physical circuits on my speakers. For this, I'm going to zoom in to my left side line array. So I'm going to highlight these 3 items that I want to fill my screen, and I'm going to hit my space bar so I can work on them easily. Remember, I can click on any bandpass, and I can also click on any channel. What we need to do is associate bandpass circuiting to physical amplifier circuiting. And what this is telling the software how is this system physically cabled. The NL8 connector that goes from my left A12 circuit 1 is going to be plugging into amplifier 101 in my system here. So I need to drag these 4 bandpasses onto that amplifier. I can do it one by one, so I can click on low 1 and drag it to my low 1. And you see once I've made a match, that speaker and that amp channel turns orange to indicate that it's matched. Now there's a quicker way to do this too, and let me show you that. So I'm going to click low 1, and it turns blue to indicate that I've highlighted it. And I'm going to go up to Mode Functions, Disconnect Channels, and I'm going to remove that channel connection. I'm going to do more than one thing at once to actually increase the speed of patching here. So if I click on low 1, hold the Shift key on my keyboard, and click on the high, I select all 4 bandpasses, making up one circuit. Now I can drag all 4 of these at once onto that amplifier, speeding up the process. I can do it even quicker though. So I'm going to select low 1 and high, holding Shift to select all of these items, and I'm going to disconnect these so you can see it even faster. I can actually do this whole VRAC at once. So I will click on low 1, and holding Shift down to my 3rd circuit, I'll click on high. And you'll notice that I highlight all 3 circuits, all 4 bandpasses. Now I can drag all of these onto this VRAC at one time, patching all 3 amplifiers at once. So I can quickly go through my design and patch all of my amplifiers. Hit the space bar to zoom out. I'll highlight my right side, and I'll zoom in. I'll do the first 3 circuits with one swift patch, and then I'll do the last 2 circuits. Now I want to patch my front fills. For that, I'm going to zoom in on my left front fill. I'm going to highlight my low and mid-high band passes, and I'm going to patch this 2-channel cabinet onto the first 2 channels of my VRAC 2. I'll zoom out, and I'll select my right front fill and put it on VRAC 2 as well. For my subs, it's just as easy. I'll select the first and last subwoofer in each container, and I'll drag them over in groups of 3 to my amplifiers sequentially as so. So now with every speaker, every circuit in my project successfully patched, you see I have every speaker is indicated that it's orange, so it indicates that it has been patched to an amplifier. I'm ready to move forward in the project workflow. The next available icon to click on is Set Speaker Presets. When I click Set Speaker Presets, you will see an arrow indicator on every single container. And what that means is the software has reduced the thought process for you of changing the preset of this entire system. This left A12, for example, is connected to 5 amplifiers across its 5 circuits. So to change the preset, all you have to do is click on the speaker and go to the crossover settings and change which preset you want to use, and it will change that data in all of the associated amplifiers. So with A12s, we know we have 2 presets. We have full range, so a 60 Hertz natural crossover, or 80 Hertz crossover. I'm happy with the system at full range, so I'll leave it at full range. But just so you can see, here's where templates speed the process up for you a little bit. So if I change my left side to an 80 Hertz crossover, you'll notice that my right side has changed as well, because the system knows that you're not going to want your left and right side at different crossover settings. So I'll change this back to full range, and you'll notice that the left side has followed as well. I want all of the components in my system to be at full range. If you can see, I click on the arrows, I can see that they already are. And I'm going to want my subs crossed over at 60 Hertz to match that of my A12. And they default to that value. Happy with my speaker presets for my system, I'm ready to bring this system online. You see, once I've clicked speaker presets, I'm then able to hit the online button. So I'll click go online. And the system is going to prompt you whether you want to mute the design or leave unchanged. Now, this is an important step. If this is the first time you're bringing your system online, it's recommended that you mute the design because you might have signal going to one of your amplifiers without you knowing it. By muting the design before going online, it's going to put the amplifiers into a mute state as soon as they're contacted. If you leave the system unchanged, it's going to leave the mute status whatever the amplifiers are at right now. Remember, like I said, if this is the first time you've brought this project online, I recommend that you mute the offline design before going online. But one handy feature of Performance Manager is that you can actually go back to this mode and change the preset of a speaker while the system is live during a performance. So in that situation, had I gone back and changed the preset to a running system, I would then want to leave my system unchanged and not mute it because it's in use. New system, we're going to mute. So I click mute, and then we're brought to the Go Online page. On the left side here, we see Discovered Devices, and on the right side here, we see Online Devices. When devices are matched, they'll move from Discovered to Online. Before we match any of our amplifiers, I want to talk a little bit about our HiQNet NetSetter tool. For anybody that's familiar with Audio Architect, the HiQNet NetSetter tool is a standalone application that runs outside of Audio Architect or Performance Manager, and it's a piece of software that we use to manage IP and HiQNet addressing of all items on a HiQNet network. When you click on HiQNet NetSetter, you'll see this window, and it's prompting you on the top left-hand side to choose the PC adapter you're concerned with. I'll navigate down to the adapter that I know that my amp racks are on, and you see the window begin to be populated with all the amplifiers that I have online right now. You can filter and organize by any of these categories. So I can organize by IP address, and you see that it sequentially organizes my system by IP address. You can also organize by device ID, so that would be your HiQNet address. So I will do that. And you notice that all the amplifiers that I referenced in my file are online right now. 101 through 103, 201, 203, all the way down to my amplifier 603. Additionally, it tells you the status of the devices, so these are green and discovered, the device type, and the device name. If the device has been used in a rack previously in Performance Manager, it will also tell you in the container position category. So you see I have VRAC. These amplifiers have been previously used in a VRAC. So if I want to change any values or work on IP addressing, this is where I would do it. So if this is the first time I bring a system online and I need to change my IP addresses or device IDs, HiQNet address, this is where I'm going to do it. So if I want to change the IP address, for example, of amplifier 101, I would just click on the IP address and I can change it to whatever IP I want, hit enter on my keyboard, and apply current edits. In the system, you'll see the amplifier drop offline, and then it'll be rediscovered with its new IP address. Now that's been rediscovered with its new 101 IP address, I can do the same thing to revert it back to the .11 address that I want. I'll simply change the IP address, hit enter, and apply the current edits. The amplifier will be rediscovered, and it'll show a green discovered, meaning that it's ready to go and online. So if you were needing to change HiQNet addresses of any of your amplifiers, this is where you would do it, as well as IP addresses. So I'm happy with where my system is. I have all the amplifiers I need online. And my system has already been logically IP addressed and HiQNet addressed. So I'm going to exit out of NetSetter, and I'm going to work back in Performance Manager. Now, this is the first time that you use Performance Manager for the day. It's very possible that you need to set the correct network adapter. So right next to Net Setter, there's also a tool called Set Network Adapter. By clicking Set Network Adapter, it gives you the options to add a connection if the connection that you're using is not already enabled in this Ethernet interfaces box. So if the connection you were using in one of these interfaces box, you could quickly add connection, select the connection you want to use with the software, hit add, and then it'll display in this box indicating that the software is scanning that Ethernet interface for devices. My connection's already enabled, so I'll hit OK. And we're ready to go back into the workspace and match these physical amplifiers to the digital ones in my software. On the left-hand side, you see I've already discovered 6 VRACs. So like I said, these amplifiers had been previously used in a VRAC form, so the system already knows to logically group those amplifiers into a VRAC. If I click any of these down arrows on any of these 6 VRACs, you see it lists the 3 amplifiers that make up the VRAC, as well as the high QNet address assigned to that amplifier. If you want to re-rack a set of amplifiers because they've been removed or re-racked in a different manner, you can click on any of these rack groupings and hit Clear Container. Now the software will rediscover all the devices on the network, and now you see 5 VRACs and 3 individual amplifiers because I've broken the container that included amplifiers 601 through 603. So with amplifier 601 through 603 not in a container, let's say, for example, I want to find that actual amplifier in my venue. I don't know which amplifier 601 is, or I forgot. I can easily click on amplifier 601 and hit locate, and you can see amplifier 601 right behind me to my right here blinking. When I hit locate devices, it blinks the front panel display of the device you're locating. So I'll hit stop locating, and the screen stops blinking. Happy knowing that all my devices have been discovered, I'm ready to match these physical devices to the digital ones in my workspace. So I have 2 options to do that. I can hit auto match and send, or I can hit auto match and receive. Now, if this is the first time you're bringing this venue online or using this file, you would hit auto match and send. And what that is telling the software to do is to match the amplifier's high QNet address or high QNet address, and then send all the preset EQ input and preset data to the amplifier. What auto match and receive means is match the amplifier's high QNet address for high QNet address, but then extract the information from the amplifiers and repopulate the file. Now here's the use case for this. Again, if this is the first time that I am setting up a venue, I'm going to hit auto match and send. Let's say at the end of the day yesterday, I made an EQ change and I loved it so much, but I forgot to save my file. The next day, when I go to start the same file up, if I hit auto match and send, it's going to overwrite that amplifier with whatever the system was saved as. But I want to extract that EQ change because I loved it so much. So today, I'll hit auto match and receive. And the software will match the amplifiers, but then extract those changes and repopulate the software for you. Again, today, new file, new venue, so I'm going to hit auto match and send. I click the button and you see all the amplifiers have a spinning wheel that says matching, and then once they're matched, the amplifier lights up to indicate that it's been matched, and the devices move from the discovered column to the online column. Additionally, if you remember, I had no VRAC 6, these were loose amplifiers. Once the amplifiers were matched by high QNet address to AmpRack 6, it automatically assigned this VRAC 6 title that this rack is named to those amplifiers and re-racked it for me for convenience. With all my devices online, I'm ready to move forward with the next step, and that's to edit groups. So like we talked about before, Performance Manager, because we use templates, created a lot of very handy groups for me already, making it very easy for me to navigate and control my system. So if you look on the right, I have a venue group, which is auto-created and includes every circuit of every speaker in the venue. I have a left-right group. You can tell that I've selected left-right because everything highlights blue that's selected. My left-right control group indicates my left and right main PA. 4-point row stacks, that would be my subwoofers on the bottom, and 2-point, which is my fill. Now, I don't love these names right now, so I can highlight left and right, and I'm going to hit rename at the bottom. So I'm going to name this logically left, right, A12. I'm going to name the 4-point row stacks to logically be subs. And I'm going to rename 2-point stack to front fill. Now, these are names, like I said, name everything always in your project workspace. It makes navigating very easy, and in a mission-critical time crunch, it makes getting around quickly easy. So underneath venue, you can see I can break down groups further, and the system is auto-grouped by circuit, as well as bandpass. For subs, it gives me outers, and it gives me inners. And I can name these subgroups as well. Now let's say I want to create a control group that wasn't auto-created for me. That's just as easy to do. On the bottom left-hand side of the Edit Groups menu, I can hit New. And then I'm able to select everything that I want to include in that group. So I held Shift and I selected the top left and the bottom right of my left A12 cluster. And I'll do the same for my right A12 cluster. And for this group, I want to be mains plus front fills. So I'll select all the band passes of everything I want to include. You see that it's all selected because it's turned blue. And I'll hit OK. The software is going to prompt me to name this group of 44 items. And I'm going to name this mains plus front fills. Hit Enter, and you see I have my new custom user group ready to go. Now, happy with the grouping options I have, it's time to move forward and select the input sources to the arrays. So I click the next available open clickable tab item, and that's Select Input Sources. And just like we saw with set speaker presets, every array, or it gives us the option to select an input source. So when I hit the arrow icon, it prompts me for to fill up to 3 input sources, high, medium, and low priority. So you can have triple redundancy on your inputs. So if any of these inputs drop out, you can have a redundant backup. For today's example, I'm actually connected to all my amp racks with my analog 1, and I have no redundancy. So I'm going to move around from cluster to cluster, and I'm going to change my high priority input to analog 1. Now at this point, you would often patch different from what I'm doing here. This is where you would patch your system to reflect how you're actually patched out of the console. But for the sake of this example, I'm patching everything to analog 1 to reflect how I have my test system set up here at the HARMAN soundstage. So now that I have all my inputs properly selected, I can move forward to test my system. So I'll click the test system icon. And now we're in the system test mode. As soon as you enter test system, you notice that everything goes red. And that means that when you enter test system, the system is fully muted. Anything that's red means it's muted. If it's green, it means it's unmuted. I have a lot of options for controlling my mute matrix. And you'll see this matrix often in the software. On the left-hand side, you'll see a grouping toolbox. But I can actually control things on a much finer scale. So if I zoom in on my left A12, I can mute and unmute on a bandpass by bandpass basis. And one thing to note here, when I change just a single bandpass, you see that the icon goes from muted to this equal sign with the cross through it. That's a sign that will come up fairly often in the software. What this means is that not all items in this group have the same status. For example, the majority of this array is muted except for one bandpass. So this is giving me the equals with the slash, indicating that this entire container is not in the same state. But if I mute it, it goes back to being red. So I can mute and unmute bandpass by bandpass. I can mute and unmute circuit by circuit, container by container, or with the control groups that I've set up in edit groups mode. Subs, front fill, and then I have my mains plus front fill control group. You'll notice that the amps actually light up green to indicate that they are unmuted as well with the speakers they're matched to. And here again, you see that mixed state icon indicating that not all items in the venue are live. I can also mute and unmute my whole venue at once. So in the mode functions, we have a couple other cool controls. We have solo mode, which allows us to, when selected, solo bandpass by bandpass, and you don't have to click and unclick, and this becomes very handy when we use the signal generator in a second. Additionally, I have mute protect, and when enabled, mute protect doesn't allow me to change the status of any items in the venue. So if you were worried about accidentally clicking something, you can toggle mute protect on and off. So I'm going to go back to solo, and I'm going to mute everything. And at this point, I want to test my components. Before I even worry about getting signal to the system, or before I worry about if the console's patched correctly, I want to make sure that everything from my amp racks to my speakers is functioning properly. So I do that here in the signal generator. When I enable the signal generator in test system mode, it changes every amplifier's input to an internal oscillator. Okay, the oscillator can be white, pink, or sine, and you have adjustable frequency on the sine wave. And I also have a variable level control of that oscillator. So I'm going to enable oscillator, and I'm going to unmute just low 1 of my left A12. I'm going to slowly bring up my fader, and you can hear in the background pink noise through just my low 1 circuit on my A12. Additionally, if I zoom in on the circuit, I notice there's a small number on that bandpass. That is the live impedance of that circuit. So if there was a cabling issue here and I was missing a whole speaker or I was missing a driver, I'd be able to see it here live. When doing this type of test, it is important, though, that you have the signal generator at a level that's high enough to produce an accurate impedance reading. So I will run through this PA, and you can hear it. And I know, after I've run through my entire system like that, that all my components check out, and the impedance values are correct, knowing that all my drivers are correct, and all my cabling is correct. So at this point, I'm ready to check input signal. To do that, very simply, I can switch the mode to input meters mode, and you'll notice the speakers change to input bars on a circuit-by-circuit basis. I'm going to send some audio to my system, and it's here that you'll see green bars indicating an input signal is being received by all my amplifiers equally. I'm playing a song here from my console, and you see it's making it to all speakers, which means it's properly patched and getting to all my amplifiers. Now, it's important here you recognize that input signals in Performance Manager are indicated as green, and output post-amplifier is indicated as blue. So when you see the two different signal bars, that's what that means. So at this point, I know that my system is component checked, wired correctly, hooked up to the correct amplifier, and I'm receiving signal from the console. So the next step would be to tune the system, which would be the next item in the work bar. So by clicking Tune System, this enters the System Tuning menu. Okay, and we're not going to go too deep into this mode right now. We're going to touch this in greater depth in the advanced class, but I want you to know where these functions live. Once in Tune System mode, this is where we're able to get delay. So if I click delay, you see I get a delay box over every container. Subs, for example, you see I have a circuit-by-circuit delay on the bottom, and then I have a group delay, right? So I can dial in delay for the entire group of subs or an individual sub. So very finite control. And we'll see exactly how that comes into play in our next advanced PM webinar where we import a steered subarray. I have delay control for my mains, and you see as I dial in delay, it actually does the same delay for the left and right-hand side. Again, this was a group left and right template, so it knows that they're hung next to each other in a way that I would want to be delayed at the same value. My front fills, I have control over the group, and then if I zoom in, I also have finite control on a circuit-by-circuit basis. Delay can be done in Performance Manager as milliseconds, so in the seconds tab, or you can do it with feet or meters if it makes it easier for you. For example, you don't have an analyzer and you're doing a simple distance delta to calculate delay. Also have a level mode. By clicking level mode, you see I have level control over the group of the whole PA, and then again on a circuit-by-circuit basis. Now remember, we imported this array from Performance Manager. So if you look back at Performance Manager, at my LAC file, you notice that my bottom circuit, we gain shaded the bottom circuit 0.5 dB. Well, because I imported the array into Performance Manager, you'll notice that the gain shading is already there. So I don't have to repeat that step twice. Now, if I select my control groups, and I selected my left-right A12, you notice that I have the ability to select Calibrate Arrays. Calibrate Arrays is the same LACP control panel that we used in line array to optimize the tonal balance of the system. So if I click Calibrate Arrays, you'll notice that we have the same EQ filters, or system filters, that we had and were able to interact with in line array controller. So right now, I'm clicked on my left and right A12, which is my whole line array, so I have the ability to interact with my first two global filters. You'll notice there's already 3 dB of array size compensation on the system, and if we switch back to our LAC file and get into the LACP control panel, you'll notice that that same 3 dB of array size compensation was put into the file. So it came over from the LAC design into our Performance Manager file. Additionally, if I flip down to circuit 5 in LAC, you'll remember that we put a 4 dB of reduction of high frequency to compensate for distance on the bottom circuit number 5. If I switch back to Performance Manager and I select circuit 5 from the grouping toolbar on the left, you'll see that the same 4 dB of reduction has imported itself from line array controller. A very handy tool, makes your life much easier, all the things coming over from LAC. So remember, Calibrate Arrays we use to interact with the system tonal balance, like we talked about in line array controller. But beyond the tonal balance of the system, we also give you group EQ. So I can select any of my control groups, and I can select group EQ. Additionally, I can group EQ the venue, but I have 12 parametric filters on each amp channel that I can use too. And this is where we would tune the system for the space we're in, or potentially tune the system for the engineer that would be mixing on the system for that night. This is where, when the engineer says, can you pull a little 2K out, because he's mixing with too much 2K, I could grab an EQ filter and put it on 2K. Again, we'll go into some of this in much greater detail in the advanced classes coming up, but for now, just know this is where it exists. While in Tune System mode, I can also enter my mute matrix again and see the same mute matrix that we used in Test System mode, and I have Mute Protect like I did before. Once we've tuned the system, the final step is to enter Run Show mode. So at this point, the system is tuned and tested, and I know I'm ready to bring it online and use it. So I enter Run Show mode, and Run Show mode changes the toolbar to reflect things that you would want as a system technician during a show. So we've gotten rid of the building icons for building a new system, and we have just icons that you'd want, tools that you'd want to use during a show. As soon as you hit Run Show, you'll notice that we put mute protection on, so that there's no accidental state change of the system. So if you want to bring the system online, you would uncheck mute protection, and then you can unmute the venue and bring the system up and live. On the left-hand side, we have monitoring tabs. So system meters is overall container by container system meters. Circuit meters give you a more finite view as to the metering of each individual circuit. For example, I have some shading happening on my lower circuit, so it's going to reach its peak half a dB, excuse me, so the rest of the system will reach its peak half a dB before the shaded side does. So under circuit meters, we're able to see output meters of every individual circuit or input meters of every individual circuit by changing this to input. And remember, input meters are always green and output meters are always blue. I can change my metering from peak to RMS if that's what I want. And I can move through the tab. I see I can click load and I get a live impedance of every bandpass. I hit circuit thermal. I get an amplifier thermal by bandpass by bandpass. Circuit AC is AC voltage of each amplifier connected to each circuit. System health is a global snapshot of your system. Green and OK means everything's great. Input priority status, this is where the system tells you which of your 3 redundant inputs the system's running on. So right now, we're on high priority. It's shown as green. But if we switch to medium priority, for example, the system would actually indicate an orange and tell you that it's on its medium priority input. And then as a system tech, you would know to figure out what happened that the system lost its high priority input. AES status, if I was connected to AES. And then additionally, in run show mode, we have access to our delay controls, the same seconds, feet, and meters control, level, and the same group EQ we looked at in Tune System. Going back to my mute matrix, that brings us to the conclusion of our introductory run-through of Performance Manager. I'm going to hit Exit Show, and I would love to open the floor up to questions if we have had any.
Hey, Chris, it doesn't look like we had any questions come through. We can give it a minute or two and see if any come over now.
Okay, great. Nick, do you think you need to add anything, or are we pretty covered?
I think you covered things very well. We did have one question come in regards to input priority status. The individual noted that even though it says that it is with AES set to priority input number 1, analog set to 2, that he has seen that it states that it's actually using the medium priority of analog, but indeed it actually is on priority 1 of AES. My answer to this question is that this is actually a known bug, and we are working on the resolution as we speak. We expect a new release to be coming out relatively soon that takes care of this.
Great.
A question did come through, Chris. The question is, what if I wanted to make the HPF for the subs to 80 Hz instead of 60?
Sure, that's no problem. All we would do is we would go back into Set Speaker Presets mode. I'd select the subs, same little arrow on the container, and I'd change my crossover to 80.
Perfect. Just checking to make sure no other questions came through.
Another thing to add on what Chris just touched on is that when we switch those crossover or preset settings, audio can actually be passed through the system and it will not drop at all from an audio perspective while it changes the preset. So this is actually a nice function to switch the preset, hear the tonal difference, but never drop audio.
Got it, okay. We do have one last question, and it's, can we have custom sub crossover frequency?
The answer to that is no. All the presets are pre-engineered for optimal performance right here at JBL in Northridge, California. We've given you the options that the subs and the equipment perform its absolute best at, and we lock the system for only the options that we give you in the software.
Got it. That looks like all the questions that came through. If you do have any additional questions, you can reach out to Chris directly. I do want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Chris, for your time presenting.
Of course. I got my contact info right here on the screen. People can scan my QR code and bring my contact information right into their phones, or you can just shoot me an email based on the email that you see on the screen. Before we go, I just want to put this slide up quickly. This is the spring 2020 performance audio webinar schedule that we're going forward with. So please mark these dates in your calendar. Our plan is to do 2 sessions a day, as we've been doing. They'll be available on jblpro.com/learning sessions. And we have a lot of great stuff there. Even outside the performance audio, we have a lot of great individuals doing a lot of great presentations. So I definitely recommend that you take a look at that section and sign up for some more webinars. I'll leave with my contact information right there for everybody.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.